My name is Eric Ruth, for those of you who have no idea who I am, and I am an independent video game developer out of Virginia. I've been game developing for, it's been a better part of a decade now, almost, actually, yeah, about 8 years or something like that. Made a name for myself making small fan games. I made a Mega Man game called Mega Man Rocks. I made the first angry video game nerd game called The Angry Video Game.
I'm gonna ask you if that was the same name.
Yeah, that's me, yep. He did review my game in his Angry Video Game Nerd Games review, starting with mine, because again, mine was the first, and he went in chronological order, I think. Yes, I've met James. Yes, he is high a lot of the time. Just throwing that out there for everybody. A really nice guy. He was very, very easy to work with too, so nothing but love for James. The game that I'm talking about now is a game that I've been working on for 9 months. It's my newest game. Called Hauntsters. Many of you might be able to see this lovely t-shirt that I had printed out. It is quite cafe press-tastic, which is its own word. And I'm going to talk about not just the game as it is now, but it actually had kind of a long road, and I can talk about some of the things I learned on that path because I've done some work with AAA studios since then. I got a chance to work with Devolver Digital briefly, which is the Serious Sam people. I did a fair stint with Riot Games. Some of you may know League of Legends. I did a little bit of work with Valve, just a smidge. Still got some friends there, some really cool people, love Valve. And the eventual Half-Life 3, eventual. But what I'm going to touch on right now is that path and exactly how I got to where I'm at. So Hauntsters is a video game about ghosts that fight. Sounds pretty basic, and more or less it is. What's unique about it is it's like a combination between Smash Brothers and a MOBA. You've got the single screen, 4-player, multiplayer action of a Smash type of game, combined with multiple skills and kit-based combos of like a MOBA. MOBAs are fantastic, and I really got drawn into them, but there are a lot of downsides to them. Number one, they can last a long time. And if you're the type of gamer that has a lot of things going on in your life, you don't have 45 minutes a game to sit and devote a lot of the time. That's why a lot of newer MOBAs are sort of, kind of cornering a smaller, quicker game time. Arena of Fate does 20 minutes flat out. The game has a timer. It can only go 20 minutes. End of story. Smite games tend to go 10 to 15 minutes. So I'm glad that other companies are kind of targeting that because I think that's kind of important. Not that there's anything against League of Legends or Dota or any of the hour-plus games people can fall into, but I have specific loves that I like, and I can understand that people who have those loves alongside of me. Hauntsters is that kind of goal. Fighting games are fun. They're fun to watch. They're fun to get in line and play with because they're over fairly quickly, right? Games go 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 5 at longest, and usually you don't see 3 out of 5s unless you're at, like EVO or something like that. So, long story short is it's fun, it's quick fun, high energy, high skill, compacted into a short time frame. That was the goal I was looking to achieve. Now, originally, Hauntsters was called Hauntlings. And Hauntlings was a real-time strategy game I was working on. For example, I brought some of my old mock-ups along for... So this was a screenshot of the original Hauntlings, which was an RTS where you would build a deck of ghosts, take them into a town, and try to scare out all of the residents. You can see the mini-map down here. Is everything clear? I'm not sure everyone can see. The lights are on, right? So maybe we should lights out. Someone grab it. You are the man. Just hit the wall. That's just how it works now. It's Star Trek. That's what we do. Just bang your head against the wall. That works. At home, it works for me. I should learn to operate a light switch one day. I feel like that should... Oh, there you go. And you guys are smarter than me because I just was going to go with the hit your head against the wall thing for an hour. Well, there you go.
Light switches 101.
Dun-dun-dun. There we go. Man, you guys are great. Can you see okay now? It is a little dark, yes, but we'll move on to lighter things in a moment. The original game was supposed to be very dark. It was supposed to be takes place at night. You take your ghosts in, and you would be able to This was touchpad designed wherein you could switch between your ghosts by clicking on their icon in these color slots at any given point. And you could, of course, move your finger around the map to move it around. It was isometric, obviously. And the goal was all of these little red places that you see on the map were all houses, and you had to clear them all out. And some houses were easier to clear out than others because they only had like 3 people in them. Houses with larger families were harder. And then you get like churches were even more hard, but not only that, but they could do damage back at you because they had this aura of God or something. I don't know. I wasn't really, I didn't specify the stats a lot, okay? It didn't get far, this version. But I also had done up the title screen so you could see the, at the time, logo, Hauntlings. It's pretty solid. But yeah, I got it working a little bit, but then decided that this wasn't what I was looking for. Again, I wanted fast-paced, kind of right to the point action, and RTSs are like the exact opposite of that, right? So I moved on. I said, okay, what do I want to do with it now? So then I thought about combining 2.5D brawlers with MOBA. I'm like, okay, that's faster, and you've got like a more direct action sort of thing going on. Brawlers, for those of you uninformed or not in the know, are things like Final Fight and the old X-Men arcade game, which I think is actually even here down the hall. Those are brawlers. They're kind of they call them 2.5D because they're not real 3D. They're like this, So with that in mind, I had put together some concept pieces for a hand-drawn version. This is a character called Bone Collector. He was drawn by me and then colored by a friend of mine who just got in there and kind of worked it out for me. At the time, I didn't really want to spend a bunch of time doing art myself. I just wanted to design and code and call it a day. But as it turns out, when you're a single-person studio, it becomes very difficult to not have to do literally everything. And we'll touch on that more in a little bit. We've also got, what concepts do we have? Ooh, there's a more complete version of that character, Bone Collector. We actually did, some more solid coloring and so forth. Came out okay. It's not my favorite thing ever, but it's good. It certainly was fine for the time. Another character, Poltergeist. And we really wanted to stick to, I really liked horror movies, so I really wanted characters to genuinely be kind of creepy or unsettling. I eventually got over that, and we'll, again, get to that point when we hit it, but I really liked this character because this character was actually kind of jacked up looking, and people would look at this and be like, ugh. That's kind of what I liked. And then this was the HD redoing of the logo for this version of the game. Moving forward, because that is not where our story ends, I decided that this was doing the hand-drawn work was just too much work. I couldn't do it myself. The people who said that they would help me wound up dropping out, and that will happen a lot if you're trying to, like a college student trying to get like friends together to work on games. Not everyone will be as dedicated as you all the time. It happens. What are you going to do? Other people have other interests. So ultimately, I was left in a state of not having the resources or the people to help me finish a project that I started. Boo! So I had to move on to doing it myself. So now, this version of the game, here is a screenshot mock-up of the pixel art version, which I went ahead and started tackling. So this is, again, a 2.5D brawler combined with MOBA aspects, including, but not limited to, this whole thing being a single lane that is pushed by minions. And your goal is the 2 people on the team are to push into the other side, destroy the other side's mausoleum, which is where their creatures spawned from, and do it all through upgrading yourselves and using your abilities in combo. Again, this is very MOBA heavy with like a touch of 2.5D brawler. But this was the first mock-up that I put together so I could break down sort of all the individual assets. That's how I work. When I'm making an idea and I want to convey it to people, make the mock-up screenshot, make like a BS screenshot from scratch, and that way I can understand how it looks, what kind of tones and themes I want to use. Any individual thing I don't like, I can quickly replace, go in and do something new. And then when I get to a screenshot that I'm like, yes, I'm good with this, let's move forward, then I can peel assets out of it to start actually working on the game. Very helpful for concepting out and then being able to use concepts for the final product. When you're a one-man machine like myself and making games yourself, Anytime you can make art or assets of any kind that can be reused, that's good. That's a time saver. I can't tell you how wonderful it is in those scenarios. So here's a sprite sheet of one of the characters. If you guys are interested in, like sprites and how they can sort of be utilized. This is a sprite sheet for one of the characters. This version of a character called Cornstalker, and he was supposed to be sort of like a Jason Voorhees kind of a character. Like a big, strong, silent, masked murderer. That was sort of his thing. So here is individual assets you can see on the body and the arms and the legs, and then I put them together into this walking animation you can see centered, right here. Here's some of his attack animations. You can see the big swoops there and the scarecrow that he uses to strike fear into the hearts of villains or whatever. Again, I'm more of an idea guy, not an exact words kind of guy. My bad. So yeah, you can see all this here and how it's sort of these pieces of animation come together. But yeah, so that version of the game did get off the ground and functional to a point where I actually made a Kickstarter video to try and get it finished. Because again, it turns out that when you're working with yourself, time's a big constraint. So I was trying to get the money, to get people to help me, get it to a point where it was easy to make new content for. I wanted to be able to have a whole bunch of characters. I wanted to have like 30 characters. And of course, since all that's time consuming, I needed more people. The Kickstarter didn't get me much money. I think it got me like 38 cents, maybe. Really, I think it was maybe about $150 or something. Not nearly enough to hire someone to help me with stuff. So the game got shelved. Since that project, I was able to get some of those jobs I told you about, working with some big companies. I got to meet some great artists and some good people, learned about time management, learned about the best way to reutilize assets and things like that from people who've been doing it for 20 years in the AAA studio industry. And that helped me quite a bit. I can only say good things about the things that I learned from those wonderful places. That being said, Nick Jr. So we moved on to a version of the game where it's still Hauntlings, and it's still sort of a 2.5D thing, but I turned it into a fighting game. And I pitched this idea to some of my friends at Riot, and they were like, this is a neat idea. I think you should go with that. So off I went. So let's see, so here are some of the character redesigns of, let's zoom in here because it's very sizable. So there was my redesign of Cornstalker to make him more like a scarecrow, but still bulky and big, and bless you. Dollface, the little girl who was hung and killed, and Preacher, an old man with the sort of Old West dual pistols, Giggles, the murder clown, the Skinwalker. Yeah, some of these characters came out pretty neat looking. So some of the designs got reused later, and again, we'll get to that in a minute. Buffalo Hote was a cool Native American who was killed by somebody scalping him but messing up, so they literally just chopped off half his head. So that's not a successful scalping. For those of you who are really interested in scalping, also get help. Blood Siren, which is a character that got redesigned into another character, which will come up on soon. Poltergeist got redesigned. I still liked a lot of that character's sort of vibe, so I went with it. With this supermodel who was murdered by a serial killer with a chainsaw, so she then uses the chainsaw, and then I had these neat ideas where she would throw parts of her, she would cut herself in half and throw half of her body across the screen, and then she could still kick and stuff with her legs, but then swipe with the chainsaw with the upper half, thus making her like a dual presence. Maybe I'll revisit that idea. Ozo was a science experiment, and Bone Collector returns with a different look from the original Hauntlings designs. Still no head, but now as opposed to hanging from a stick, it's at the end of a walking stick, so progress. And Black Widow, which was a new character I really liked. This Victorian England woman who committed suicide after her husband passed away. I liked it. She's the whole weeping, sorrow, woe is me, tear thing. She was cool, so she made it into the final game too. But again, we'll get to that in a sec. We wound up doing a new logo, new game, new logo. And this was colorful and looked nice, and sort of, it conveys the sort of tone of the game. Then we started on sprites for this game. So here are some of the game sprites for the characters. Here we have Cornstalker, and we've got Bone Collector here. Got Preacher, and then Dollface. The game was animated and started working, and I spent 14 months on this game. I'll show you in a second. I've got video footage to show you on this one, so this is where we get juicy. But 14 months for roughly 3/4 of a single character is too much. So if you want to learn a lesson about time mismanagement, there you go. That is way too much time for an indie guy to spend on. Like, this game would have taken literally 10 years to make. Obviously, as a person who didn't like Duke Nukem Forever very much, not interested in that time frame. You might be able to guess why there. But yeah, here you go. Here we're going to play. What do I have? Can't play in Windows. I don't even have VLC on here, do I? Just do it. Just do the thing. Really? Come on. Come on. Don't give me shit for this. There we go. Well, here you go. So I hand drew and animated everything. So there you can see all the attacks of the character, all of that hand animated. And I took it as a pride thing to animate it at extremely high animation levels. Fighting games typically have like a single punch might take between 8 and 14 frames of animation. This was 25 frames. I made sure things were smooth as butter for this game. I don't know if you can really tell or not, but I hand animated all this. So it's 14 months starting to sound about right now. Yeah, 14 months for that. Go me. One more time thank you. And it's a shame because it really did come out. It was looking nice. I have some other AAA friends that I showed this video to, and they're like, it's a shame you can't do this project. They're like, I'm impressed. This is actually a good job. That's usually we just say good job because we don't want to hurt your feelings. But we really mean it this time.
Is it sad that I really like the fact that the combo meter follows the character?
I really like that too.
What were you gonna say, hon?
What program did you animate in?
I animated everything by hand in Photoshop. So I didn't use a spine program or anything. I Photoshop hand animated the whole thing. Yeah. So 14 months, do. So at that point, I looked at this and I really liked it. I really did. Right? This is genuinely something to be proud of as a single person working on a game. Now the way it was going to work, it was actually going to be MOBA-y, where these minion waves would come down the middle lane, and two sets of people are fighting in two separate lanes. So hypothetically here, Dollface and Cornstalker would be fighting in the bottom lane at the same time, and then you'd have special attacks that could make you switch lanes temporarily to help double combo someone. And then, so these meters at the top that you see here before video stops. This meter all the way at the top was going to showcase how much combo you've had, because I didn't want people to die and respawn. At that point, I sort of said, what sucks with League of Legends is late game, you get killed, right, in a bad team fight, and you're just out of the game for 90 seconds. You just gotta sit there and just watch. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing, right? That sucks. So what if there is no out of the game? There is no die. There is no lose, per se, like that, right? What if you can't kill anybody through a health meter, but the amount of combos that you do and the amount of damage that you have done to that player is stored up and put into this meter. And then every time that the meter refreshes, which is what that timer at the top is actually telling you, it will spawn a creep wave of equal power that comes in and fights in the middle. Now, what's neat about that and the unique design behind that is that you're not fighting each other to win and kill. You're fighting for a bigger push into the other team's mausoleum to destroy it. So if one team is better at working together, at doing the double combos, at switching lanes, at they're going to do better. But if you're not that kind of person, if you're a player I'm not a big combo guy, I'm more of a Street Fighter kind of guy where you do some damage and back off, do some more damage, or you'd rather take your special attacks into the minion lane and do some damage to the minions to push them off to help your wave, you have that option too, right? You're not completely screwed into, Killer Instinct players will come into this and kick the crap out of everyone else. You're not in that situation. That's the kind of attempt I had made in its game design, which I think was pretty cool. But ultimately, you know, like everything else you've seen this far, it doesn't get used. So, 14 months. But yes, any questions on this version before we kind of move into the actual final product that we'll talk about here in a second? Nothing? Okay. Easy peasy. I like you guys already.
I really like the art style there.
Thank you.
You said you could also go into the minion lane too.
So in the middle of a combo, you can switch to another lane to continue the combo. And then once the combo's dropped, you can move back. But what you could do is you would be able to, like in middle combo, you'd have a specific, everyone has a special move that will move them into another lane. And then you can keep the combo going on the other player in that lane with your teammate, or you can combo into the middle lane and kick the crap out of the creep wave. But of course, once you've beaten out the creep wave, you go back to your lane, whichever top or bottom. So you have a native lane you have to stay in, but you can temporarily move in and out of it. So now, we're going to get into the current version of the game, which has gone from being called Hauntlings to Hauntsters. And the reason for this change, even though the Hauntlings name was pretty cool, is that at the end of the day, the Hauntlings name was a failure in terms of marketing. This is where we get into like importance of PR and stuff. If somebody were to see the new version of the game and go into Google and go, oh, I saw that at, say, MAGFest, right? If you go home and you're like, oh yeah, Hauntsters, let me look that up. As you may very well do. If you had gone in and gone Hauntlings, the first thing you would have come up with is the failed Kickstarter for the original game, which is not indicative of the current game. Both in terms of what the game is, how it looks, how old. I mean, it's clearly a completely different product at this point. And if you came to MAGFest playing, a couple of you, I've seen people in here who did come over and spend some time with Hauntsters, in the corner where I'm set up. And if you went, man, I really like that game, I want to go look it up because I want to get a copy of that, and the first thing you come up with is another game that's different, that's not what you were looking for, then you might just go, and give up. And so ultimately, I don't want to disappoint, depress, or otherwise unfulfill somebody's promises or expectations. If you came to MAGFest and played Hauntsters, and you go home and want to play Hauntsters, if you Google Hauntsters, you should get Hauntsters. It's pretty much as simple as that. So the name change was done to kind of whitewash the history. Even though the game has a cool history, as I'm explaining, I didn't want that history to murky up the player's ability to find and play something that they like. That's all. So the game got its name changed to something that's indicative of what it is now, with no confusion to any past or different projects. Everyone all cool with that?
Yes.
Good deal. So let's move on to our new concepts for the new version. So the new version is the combination between Smash Brothers and MOBAs. So let's take a look at what I put in here for concepts. Oh, yep, there you go. That's my current wallpaper, because I like the way that piece came out. Thrash Siren is an evolution of the character Blood Siren, where I knew that I wanted a character that could taunt you and pull you in with a song. And I thought, well, if I've got all these ghosts from all these different eras in history, why do I have to lock it into like medieval, lore or anything like that? Why not do something like more modern, right? And I thought, well, what's kind of cool is sort of like that 80s sort of punk metal scene. And I was like, ooh, I could do like a Joan Jett sort of Ramones-esque character, right? That I could do something with. And then I started playing around with ideas, and ultimately, kaboom, there you go. So she has a siren that sings, obviously rock songs, and those singing that she does in-game is a taunt that when it hits any players, it pulls them into her, which you can experience yourself at Hauntsters in the corner of the arcade area. It'll be on a very big TV, you can't miss it. Also, we've got, who else do we have here? Oh, Black Widow. Like I said, I liked her design a lot when I did her design for the last version of the game. So we designed a little bit. I liked her name Black Widow because A, she wears black, and B, she's literally a widow. Her husband died, and okay, that's pretty easy to understand. But something I learned when I was working at Riot is called fantasy expectation. So when a player sees a character or hears their name, they automatically, without ever touching that character in any game or seeing any art, have an idea in their head of what that character is. You have to be able to come at least close to that. Everything you do with the character has to make sense in terms of the expectations the players have. So if you name a character Arg McPirate, and it turns out to just be a lady in a ball gown, doesn't really make a lot of sense, right? The player will assume that it's a pirate, and when they see a lady in a ball gown, they're like, what? And so you don't want players to ever have that kind of confusion. You want what they see and what they hear to make sense all the time. Which is why, is anybody here familiar with a MOBA called Strife? You know Strife?
Yeah, I played it the other weekend, it was great.
You like Strife? So Strife is a very colorful game, and it's got a very neat art direction, which I really like about it. But it has a really bad flaw in its gameplay design for characters, in that it gives you expectations that it doesn't meet. There is a character in that game named Caprice. There's a girl pirate named Caprice. And her like pose in game all the time, her walking stance, is holding up this flintlock pistol. She's like, I'm sassy pirate lady. I know, I'm a great sassy pirate lady, I know. And then her big art, her splash screen art, is her doing like a bottle of whiskey, pointing the gun right at the camera, kind of cool. Again, I'm sassy pirate lady. Who here wants to guess what weapon she doesn't ever use in the game ever, for any reason?
The whiskey.
No, she uses the whiskey. In fact, that's her auto attack. Yeah, her basic attack is throwing liquor at you. She doesn't use the pistol at all. Not even in like an animation, like a victory animation. She just constantly has it either on her side or in her hand. And in her art, the first thing that meets you about that character is her even like punting it in your face and doing, I'm a sassy pirate lady. But can you see why that would be negative for a player to look at that character and go, ooh, I want to fire on some people, hell yeah, parlay, ha ha! And then when you play the character and you've pressed every button and you've leveled up every one of her abilities and you've bought every item and you're like, she doesn't even use it, like at all. At all. And that's disappointing for a player, right? I know, because when I got into the beta for Strife, my first character was Caprice. And when I couldn't shoot at anyone, I was disappointed, because that's what I expected. In game design, that's kind of an important thing. When people see your product, they get an expectation. And you want to make sure that it's met. And that expectation can be purposely held low. That's why a lot of indie gamers purposely make pixel art games now rather than hand-drawn or 3D models, because pixel art, by its own definition at this point in our sort of pop culture history, sort of denotes something less or smaller. Not bad, certainly so many good pixel art games, modern and retro, but doesn't it like sort of set your expectations kind of lower? Like when you see a pixel art game and you go into it, you're not expecting Final Fantasy 17, are you? But if you see like a big AAA studio world with these, very lush graphics and 3D models that are, 2 million polys a piece, that does set your expectations higher. Hope everyone's learning something.
It's more of like, it shifts the expectations.
It shifts your
It's
expectations.
no longer expecting much more from the art, it's more expecting from the gameplay, kind of like with
Finger snapping,
Shovel
yes.
Knight.
Oh, that's Shovel Knight, yes.
Shovel Knight's gameplay is spectacular.
Yes.
But it's still back to pixel, but it's perfectly fine. It does it well.
Well, they do pixel art specifically because they were trying to invoke a certain retro feeling.
Yeah.
Like they knew that that game was very Mega Man-esque,
Yeah.
and as such, they were trying to deliver a Mega Man fantasy because they know what you expect when you expect Mega Man, which good on them. Another example, sadly for Strife, I don't want to show on Strife because it's not a terrible game, but another example is there's a character that in his art looks really cool. He's a greaser named Ace, but he's also an ice mage. So he's got like an ice pompadour. See, you know the character, right?
Yeah.
So he's got an ice pompadour, and he's got like the leather jacket with like the sleeveless leather jacket, and you can see his arms sort of iced up, and you're like, oh, that's sort of cool, an ice mage, greaser, all right, I dig it. And he's got this giant axe that he holds over his shoulder, like huge, like it's the size of him, classic Cloud Strife thing going on. And you're like, all right. When you take him into game, guess what his auto attack is? His basic attack. It's a slap. He goes like that. Holds a giant axe over his arm and does that as his basic attack. No, there's no progression hit chain where then he eventually hits you with the axe. He just hits you like this. And I'm like, come on, guys. Come on.
Like, if it was even that hard of an idea, it's like, yes, it's a giant axe, you can't keep autoing like that, but you could give like that. Like
Yeah. He's got a single giant weapon slung over his shoulder. It is like the centerpiece. Outside of his pompadour is the centerpiece of the character. And in the most basic of regular things, he doesn't use it. But that's, again, not to crap on Strife because it's not that bad a game. But it does have some big flawed design decisions. And those are things you want to keep in mind if you're ever designing something. Make sure that when your players see what you're making, that their expectations are met. And so if you think that something you're doing is making the expectations too high, if the tagline for your game is, it's like Minecraft, but better, then probably just take it down a notch, man. It's not, don't need to do all that. Plus, as somebody who's worked so long in the industry, that's like the catchphrase. Everybody trying to pitch something now is always like, it's like Minecraft, but better. But that's sort of the entire industry. Whatever the most recent hit is, it's like that, but better. Okay, Ace, whatever you say. Onto a little more concept here. Madame LaRue, who is our voodoo mistress. I don't know if that was obvious. I don't know. Now, would you say in gameplay design that if you saw a voodoo character that you assume that they would use voodoo magic in their kit? Guess what? She does! Yay for everybody! Perhaps she uses voodoo needles in her attacks? She does! Yay for everybody! But these were literally times I sat down writing down ideas for characters, and then you think, okay, voodoo character, cool. What does she have to have? You know, what are the expectations? When I say voodoo to you, what does she have to be? My wife was like, black. And I was, okay, yes. But everything I had to design on this character, from their aesthetics to the way that their attacks work, had to feel voodoo. Now, what's something, well, I guess I'll say it more as a direct rather than a question because it makes more sense that way. But something that people tend to think about, when you think voodoo, most people think voodoo dolls, right? If I do damage to this thing, damage will be done to someone else, right? If I put a pin in this doll, they'll feel the hurt, right? So I had to incorporate that style of thinking into some of her kit because, again, if there wasn't anything like that, you might feel let down. So, not to say I nailed all these characters perfectly. There are definitely some flaws in some of my designs and things, but I at least tried, right? I can give you I want a sticker that says, you tried. That implies that I failed, so you tried and mildly succeeded. I feel that's wordy for a sticker. Maybe just a star. Just a gold star.
That's what the gold star
That's what. Here was the new design for Hauntsters because I did a version of the Hauntsters logo that looked like the old one you guys saw, and then my buddy at Riot was like, "I tell you what, my buddy worked on the Street Fighter logos. I'll run this stuff by him," and he got back to us, very nice of him, free of charge, no less, and he's like, "Here's what you got to do with your logos." He's like, "I looked at your logos. They're not bad, but here's what you want to do, right?" And he gave us this big, like, point by point. And so with his help and his feedback, we eventually got to this, which I like. I think it's right there. I'll put it on the T-shirt and everything. So it came out pretty good. Ultimately, some of the things that he taught me, for example, are when you're making a logo for a game that has a lot of action or battling, maybe having the text be very kinetic or moving makes sense because it makes the game feel more jittery, and like just by looking at this logo, you get a feeling of things moving and happening, right? This obviously isn't an RTS or a story-based game or a choose-your-own-adventure. You look at this and you can tell, by knowing nothing else about the game, your expectations are being set that this game probably has some movement to it. It's got some action. Something's going to happen, right? Does anybody feel that when they look at the logo? You can say no. Like, I can be wrong. It's allowed.
Well,
don't tell my wife that,
it's
please.
Like the Street Fighter logo, it looks like somebody just took a paintbrush and just...
Yeah. I guess Street Fighter's the same thing.
Yeah. And it's very similar in this regard as well.
Same thing with...
It had to be done quickly.
There's a lot of fighting games that do the same type of thing, where games with a lot of high action will have logos that kind of move and dip, duck, dive, and dodge. Dodge, dip, duck, dive, and dodge. But yeah, that was the point in that. So I did do a sheet. Now this is the sheet I sent to the guy. This is when I sent all this. And I was like, what do you think of these different logos? Because these are all the different ones I put together for him. I took like an entire week just doing logos, by the way, at the beginning of the project. And he, like I said, he marked what his favorite ones were and what he liked about them. And then he gave us that point by point back. And then, of course, ended up with what we've got today. Some of these I still like. I mean, they're not bad. I do agree that the one we ended on is better. But, you know, I like some of these.
You know when you look at a word too much, it doesn't look like the word anymore.
It happens all the time with cheese for me. Not the word cheese, just cheese in general. So I'm going to show you now an early development build of the game that you two were there for. In fact, this is
Oh, is this us playing?
yep. This is a four-player game. This is a mostly modern version of the game. Look how little characters there are for people who played it today. This is back when touching on characters triggered their voice stuff too, which got really obnoxious real quick, so that got changed. At this point, stage hazards weren't even in. There's only 2 stages, and I don't think either one of them are even are fully functional at this point. So here you got 4 players going balls deep on each other. That sounded bad. I'm sorry. They just did. This is not that kind of game. This is horrible. That reminded me that I'm happy that there's no rule for Hauntsters. So for those of you that have no idea what's going on in this video, which is the vast majority of you, things! Ultimately, like any battle game, you're trying to deplete the health of the other players on the screen. This is a free-for-all where everybody fights for themselves and no one else. And you're trying your best to both survive the onslaught of madness while also taking people down. Yes, it does turn into a frenzy. I have people here who can confirm that 4 players gets a little nasty. We have a couple of the voice actors for this game are actually here, and they would be here with me, but they are currently at another panel, which they're doing, which is a shame, but you know, what you gonna do? Ultimately, when designing characters, there are some unique challenges. You always want to do something different, right? You don't want to do the same stuff you've seen over and over again in lots of other places. And in the game itself, you want to make sure that every character plays different. You don't want 2 characters to be identical. This isn't the old, Mortal Kombat Street Fighter 2 days, where you could just palette swap some characters with some of the same moves and call it a day. Actually, that's a great idea. I can double my roster. This guy is Cornstalker, and this guy is Thornstalker. His twin brother. And not Porn Stalker. We already covered the not balls deep thing. Sorry. Look at this madness. I don't even know what's happening. I made the damn thing. Oh, someone's got a question. I'm sorry, bud. Here, let me turn it down for you.
Develop this song. What did you use to develop the game?
Oh, I used my brain. And also... I'm just kidding. I didn't use my brain. I developed it in GameMaker Studio. I've been using GameMaker for years, and I became buddies with the guys who run it. And so I get a lot of free help with things, because I'm not, ultimately, you might look at some of my work, you might have heard or seen some of my old games, and go, oh, you're a pretty good coder. That's actually a dirty lie that you've told yourself to sleep at night. I am a terrible coder, and I'm not very good at it, and I don't like it very much. But it's a necessary evil when you work by yourself, that if you want to get things done, you got to do it yourself. So, certainly nothing against coding. It's just not. I'm an ADHD super visual designer. That's who I am. And trying to take that guy and stick him in front of a bunch of text and coding can obviously be kind of troubling some days. So GameMaker, why I use that rather than other engines, is they have a system called the drag and drop system, which is literally coding with visual steps. So it is just coding, but rather than just having like black text on a white space or white text on a black space, it allows me to literally physically see and group things by like color orientation and things like that. And that's, for a guy, again, who's so visually oriented, is so much easier for me, which is why I don't move on to Unity or anything. Because if I don't know how to do something in Game Maker, like I said, I've got the resources to either learn online myself, or worst case scenario, I'm friends with the developers and they'll help me out, that kind of thing. What's really bad are those days, because I'm so not confident in my own coding, that sometimes I'll run into a problem and a bug in what I'm trying to code, and I'll sit there for hours and try to figure out like one thing, and I can't figure it out. And eventually I'll learn through some trial and error and back and forth with the guys at Yo-Yo Games who do Game Maker, is that it wasn't my bug, it was a Game Maker bug. And that's a terrible day for somebody. That's a terrible day.
That's a lot like regular coding.
Well, yeah, but the problem with regular coding is that people are usually confident enough in themselves that after they check over it for like 30 minutes, they're like, no, this should work, this is clearly a bug with that. Not me, I assume if it doesn't work, it's completely my fault. So that thing, I could have done that without talking to them. I'd have been on that thing for days. It was painful. But like I said, I'm more of an artist. Ever since I was a kid, I used to love drawing. I always thought I was going to be a comic book artist when I was a kid. And then, as I got into Nintendo and stuff like that growing up, I was like, no, I want to make video games. And lucky for me, I've always since then known that's what I wanted to do. And since that day, I have moved toward that goal. I tried like designing my own characters when I was a kid. Of course, everyone does that when they're into games. And magically, at the end of the day, I actually was able to get a graphing calculator when I was a teenager in high school. And then I started programming with stuff on the TI-82, little word games, choose your own adventures. I did a text version of Marvel vs. Capcom. Don't ask me how it worked, because I don't remember. But those were still great exercises. I mean, even though those games were, I'm sure they were terrible. It's still good for learning, and I got the idea of what coding was, so when I started moving into engines that weren't gigantic jokes, I understood how they worked. I got what coding is, how it functions, and at the end of the day, that certainly helped me, even though those projects were terrible, and ultimately I would never talk about them with anybody but you, but you're all my secret best friends now. So it did teach me a lot about actual coding, which I would not be able to make stuff like this without my time spent on a TI-82 graphing calculator creating the text version of Marvel vs. Capcom instead of doing my math homework. So that's basically the end of how I got beginning of Hauntsters to where I'm at. The game is playable here with way more characters and stages than what you see in this video. I guess since we're down to the final 20 minutes or so, I guess it's question and answer time. So thank you everybody for listening to me talk before we start the thing. No, don't applaud. It's not worth it. What's up, bud?
You mentioned that you had a wife. Do you have kids? And if so, or even if not, how do you balance being able to develop on your own and spend time with your family and all that? Like, how do you handle that?
Good question. It's one I don't get super often, but it's a great question. So I don't have kids, and I will never have kids because I'm too career-oriented. I just want to do this forever, right? And I think it would potentially, being a dad would be fun, and I mean, who doesn't at some point kind of want to be a parent? But ultimately, I wouldn't be able to give the child the sort of attention and sort of like spotlight that the kids sort of deserve when they become, when parents have them. Not to get into sob stories, but my parents basically just were not really around for me when I was a kid. I spent all my time, television was my babysitter. That's why I can sing the Tailspin theme song, but I couldn't tell you any good family vacations stories, because they don't have any. What?
Bring the kid to MAGClassic, I love it.
Of course, and if I did ever have a kid, I most certainly would get them into games. Of course I would. I have a friend who's a coder, but he's more of an infrastructure coder, not a game coder. Oscar, you know Oscar. And he has kids, and he has like a papoose that he puts his kid in and then sits and works with his kid just staring at the computer monitor with him. So good for Oscar. But the answer to that question ultimately, because I've sort of danced around it, is that my wife and I both are individual people as well as together. So we make time to do things together. We will go out to eat together. We'll decide, hey, let's watch a couple episodes of a TV show we like together, so we'll just get in bed and watch TV. We'll talk about, we both like to watch Reddit, and we'll talk about whatever the thing of the day is, haha, funny cat video, or lol, Donald Trump for president, whatever. And my wife is very intelligent, and that's my favorite attribute about her, because I can talk to her about anything, about you know, I can say the phrase, you know, I think some of these women's rights activists are getting kind of nasty these days. And she's like, yeah. She doesn't immediately get defensive about it. She's like, no, yeah, they can be nasty sometimes. But like, she's not the kind of person who immediately takes a side just because she'll talk things out with you. So, yeah, I love my wife. She's the best person in the world because she's currently watching the Hauntsters stand while we're all here. My lovely invisible wife, everybody. But ultimately, we make our time for ourselves. But at the end of the day, she's a writer and a published one too. See, I told you that smart thing works out. And she spends her time like just writing while I work. And sometimes we'll do it in the same room. Sometimes she'll just climb into the chair next to my computer desk while I'm working, and I'll just work and she'll just write. And we'll just not interact, but we'll be near each other. It's like osmosis.
That's one of the best,
I
the
think
most
that's great
healthy
about you
relationships.
guys. You're both so creative and you're both invested in your individual creativity. You can exist together without needing to be doing something together actively all
Yeah,
the time.
we're not clingy to each other.
Yeah.
We'll do things together because we do like it, but yeah, we do our own things too. So good question. Anything else?
What kind of audience are we aiming for these days?
Well,
Those with money.
well, I've never created to start that discussion. I've actually never created a game that I've turned around and sold myself. I've never done it. All my games I've released, and this is like game 20 for me, have been free to the public because they've all been like fan games and things like that. I made Team Fortress Arcade, if anybody ever remembers seeing that. And Team Fortress Arcade got like 500,000 downloads in like a very relatively short period of time. And the guy who created Team Fortress, Robin, he told me when I met with him at Valve one day, he said, you know that we liked Team Fortress Arcade, you know, you could have sold that and we would have been okay with it. And I'm like, don't tell me that after the 500,000, don't tell me that now. And I wouldn't have realistically, because again, I'm not like trying to, people were asking today about, you know, how much are you going to sell, you know, this final product for? And I'm like, I don't know, like $5. They're like, $5? And that's it? I'm like, yeah, because I do it because I love it, and I only want to make enough money to live, right? That's it. If I can pay my bills, I'm not looking to get rich, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I've lived a life, and I've lived a time in my life where I've had really awful jobs, lived with really terrible people, come from a family that, again, I've alluded to, not particularly great, and life was really terrible. I was suicidal for a period of time, and for a reason that I can look back. Some people can look back on their days where they're like, I want to kill myself, and they go, oh, I was just being a kid. I look back and go, no, I really did want to at the time, and I really had good reason for it at the time. My life is better now, and I know what it's like to have a life where I know I contribute, where I do things people enjoy, and just hearing people like laugh and play and like, oh, this is a great game. That's 50% of the payment I want, is that. The other 50% can come in the form of a check or money order, but I do still need to buy the food to live and the ramen, you know. But the ramen and the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches are godsends.
Well, $5 for a game is also not exactly unreasonable, because if you have a lot of people, that's $5
Sure.
times however many people. So you can still be rich.
Well, like I said, that's not the goal. If I ever made something that made me an instant millionaire in the same way that Notch got super lucky, you know, I would just do more game stuff. I would just hire like 10 people to work with me all the time and be constantly working on like 2 projects at a time. That's it. I don't have these weird, my wife and I have talked constantly about our life goals, and our life goal is single family home where I can make the basement my office and she can have the second bedroom as her office. That's literally, our brains don't even think there's more than that in life. Like that's the kind of like, oh man, wouldn't it be great if we could have a yard? Wow. That's like, honey, calm down. Don't assume we're gonna get any of that in our lives. Yard, we think I'm made of money. But that's end of the world, really. That's just all I want. What's up, homie?
What's up?
Hey.
So it sounds like you put a whole lot of work into this one game.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if you've worked on other stuff at the same time as this one. If this one game is where you're putting all your energy, do you ever find it exhausting, or do you need to like work on other things to try and like get your mind off of it?
That's a great question. You guys got good questions today. So this is the current thing that takes up the vast majority of my time. Occasionally I will get burnt out on Hauntsters, and I do. And I will take a day and just work on a concept, because I have like all these ideas for games in my head. I've got this like competitive trick-or-treat game that's been in my head recently. It's like this isometric sort of top-down thing, and it's 4 players, and houses kick out candy like every so many seconds, and you're racing to get the candy and collect it from, instead of other people getting it. At the end of like 2 minutes, whoever has the most candy wins. But your costumes dictate your special ability. So some characters who's dressed as like the Flash can like activate their ability and move real quick. And then the guy dressed as a Ghostbuster can activate his vacuum pack that he's got on his back and suck candy towards him. And so like you would be able to, you'd have a character. Yes, it is very Costume Quest idea, yes. Wherein it's very like quick paced, action oriented. Try and get all the candy, and of course there'd be different layouts with and then you've got other objectives that would hurt you. Cars coming down the street could knock candy out of you in the same way that Sonic loses his rings. Your bullies throw eggs that slow you, stuff like that. So there'd be like all this crap happening. You're running from door to door, getting, and then whatever character you're dressed as, you get a power that would help you, go from one place to another, like a shell costume from Portal, and you'd be able to like jump to another location real quick, So that's been sort of like swimming around recently. The other night when I was falling asleep, that just entered my head and started just. So, but the short answer is, yeah, I get burned out a lot, and I work 7 days a week between 10 and 16 hours a day, and that includes holidays. My wife, if she's here, and you can again go talk to her, she drags me to family stuff for holidays. But I will take this laptop and put it on the Thanksgiving table and open it up and work in the middle of Thanksgiving dinner, Christmas morning, open presents all around me on. And I do it all the time because, again, when you're one person, you have to. I mean, it sucks and it burns me out sometimes. And sometimes I just die in front of my computer because I'm just so tired, and ramen's not good for you. And at the end of the day, yeah, I get burnt out and it sucks, but I just have to do it.
My question is about distribution. When you make games, and it seems to me like you're more of a journey than a destination guy, that you really enjoy the whole process of making a game, and I love seeing how the sausage is made. But ultimately, you got to get that, you're doing something that's interactive, you want other people to play.
Right.
So my question is, and you can answer it either way you want, how do you get the word out about your game? How do you distribute your game? Or how can I play some of your games? What would if I wanted to play one of your games, what would I do?
So that's also a great question. And this is easily the best round of questions I've ever had at a panel.
So usually your audience.
Yeah. Yeah, usually just idiots pile in. I need to make better games. That's really what this leads to. No, but seriously, you're right. I am more of a destination or more of a product. I like to make it. I like to get there. At the end, yeah, I'm not really a business guy. I don't know the best way to do it. But I had this clever idea once a long time ago that's worked out for me, wherein when you make fan games, you immediately attract people who are fans of that franchise. And so news sites will pick up on it by default. Like if I had made Hauntsters as my first game, which wouldn't have happened because I wasn't experienced enough anyways, but had I done this, Kotaku, Joystick, Reddit, no one would have ever talked about it because no one would have cared. But when I made Pixel Force Left 4 Dead and Team Fortress Arcade and Mega Man Rocks and the Nintendo version of Halo, yeah, my shit was popping up everywhere. And when my name pops up all the time, I have since then built an audience for myself wherein I actually have numbers of people who do recognize me and my work. Like I said, I called out a few names of games and people are like, oh yeah, I remember that, or I remember reading about that, or I remember playing it. See, and that's how. Ultimately, I have no specific goal in regards to like what's my big, sort of neon sign, how am I going to point it at me and go, look at this weird dude who does the sexy pirate thing well. I've always just kind of done that and let it happen, and now I feel like with Hauntsters coming out, I have enough, people in my pocket who know how to help me because I've had all these AAA contacts, plus my fan base who I do hear from quite regularly about my old products and projects and things they want to see. I feel like with a combination of those two, I'll wind up making it out there okay. Plus, when you put things on Steam, they always do like kind of a free promotion. Here's the new thing, and they kind of do this run through, so you get free stuff out of that too. And then ultimately, I've got friends that say Baltimore Gamer, who I'm sure when the game comes out would be happy to write about how terrible it is and how bad I smell. thing about coding all the time. No shower. No, I'm just kidding.
So you're gonna be attempting to release this on Steam?
Steam is a go-to, obviously. It's not going to be the only, though. It's not the end-all, be-all. People who are making indie games like, oh, I got to get on Steam. Steam is great, and definitely the goal. But there are a lot of other indie groups that I'm not sure if some of you have heard of Humble Bundle. Oh yeah, absolutely. And there's a number of other ones too. So it's not your only option. So that's what I'm going to do is.
No, mine, what other than Humble Bundle and, I know Steam.
Yeah, Steam, the Humble Bundle. Do you remember, John, actually I'm glad you're here because you might be able to answer this. What was Coral Slayer released on? Do you remember?
Desura.
Desura, thank you. That's another one.
Desura is in a weird state right now. It's on its way out. Itch.io is another good one that's sort of up and coming.
And then is that the one that, because Double Fine is working with a group that's doing indie promotion too? Because,
The answer is maybe. I don't remember.
okay.
I mean, if you're talking, there's Fig, which is like crowdfunding.
Yeah,
games,
they got
that's
crowdfunding stuff.
The other thing.
Kickstarting also obviously is some degree of, when people hear about it that way. But I mean, like I said, I've got big publications who post about my games. And like when I do this, I'll just send an email over to my buddies at Kotaku and probably be like, hey, do you guys mind writing like a little thing? And they always have before, so I don't see why they wouldn't now. Which is nice of them. I've always thanked them. Thank you. Send them a card with a picture of a puppy that says, hang in there. I don't know why. That doesn't, just, I'm dumb. Any other questions?
Something to add on the last one was streaming and YouTube and that sort of thing is a really great way to get your name out there now.
Yep.
in gaming.
So I could stream on Twitch with
Finding
people.
some Let's players or streamers and saying, hey, here's my game, give it a shot. I mean, you reach a huge audience that way. It's
Yep.
becoming bigger by the day, so.
That is true.
I think that'll be really helpful with Hauntsters, because being a multiplayer game, I think that'll be a really fun stream game.
Yep.
I've been seeing a lot of some of the YouTubers and streamers get a lot of their some of their YouTube buddies just playing. They really like this multiplayer.
I'm hoping to get it in the hands of, I have a connection, I don't directly know him, but I have a friend who does know him, so I'm hoping that Maximilian dude, who's famous in the fighting game community, and he streams both on Twitch and YouTube, and he's got a ton of viewers. I'm hoping that he'll take a crack at it one night and,
I have a few friends that I know would be really interested, Proton John, Division especially, I think would have a really good time with that.
plus I'm buddies with Total Biscuit, who also,
There you
because
go.
he did,
I was gonna say,
he did Team Fortress Arcade, he did a video for that,
You know
so.
what's bad, or maybe not bad is not the right word, when you've got YouTube streaming personalities that have action figures.
Yeah, I was
Toy
gonna say,
store.
they actually have action figures now, so huge.
How do you motivate yourself to work on the game all day, every day? Wake up early in the morning, work on the game, go to bed. How do you get up that motivation and focus?
Some days it's hard. There are days when it is like a regular job, where it's like you're just like, like that Monday at work, and you're like, There are some times when that's, when I've got like a big chunk of code I have to debug and I can't find the bug. There's a bug in the game that's still in right now, and I can't find the problem. And I've searched multiple times with Black Widow's ice. She's got this ice web, and if you walk into the ice web, you get frozen, and you're not supposed to be able to move. But there's some bug where something happens somewhere, and you're able to move before the ice thing ends. And I don't know what that bug is, and I've been looking for it for 5 months, and I still can't find it. And that one's a real headache. But I don't know. I guess the answer to the question is coffee. My friend once said that coders are just people, they're just middlemen that turn coffee into code. That's just what their job is. And so I guess that's what I do. I just stick with it. It's nice. You know what is a motivation? It's nice when I get fan mail and people tell me, oh, I just played, like Mega Man Rocks or Team Fortress Arcade. That's really cool. Just wanted to say, your games are real neat. Thanks for doing that. That kind of stuff is nice because I'm like, it gives you, it's like a little shot, and you get do and you get going. And on the right day, those can be real helpful. So,
We
yeah.
also think about your alternatives, going back to working for somebody else.
Yeah.
Slightly over minimum wage on their hours.
Yeah.
Cloak it.
So yeah, I think that is the end of everything. I think our hour is up. I want to thank you guys so much for coming because it was very nice of you to spend an hour of your MAGClassic being here with me. I love you all. I have free hugs for everyone if you want to come up. I'm a big hugger. I'm a lover.
You should really start charging.
I'm a lover, not a fighter, but I'm also a fighter, so don't screw with me.
I will always be the person to tell you to start charging.
thank you again, guys. Have a great MAGClassic.